Good morning. It's Wednesday, May the 4th. I'm Dr. Steve Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System, and this is Show Me the Science on Open Mics. I'm so excited about this program. If you're a regular viewer, you know we always try to follow the science. We also recognize that years of medical school and research make it easier for us to do that. We want to make it easier for you too. Today we're going to talk about research benefiting a patient population near and dear to my heart. It's something I've devoted much of my professional career to, and that's treating children and adults with cystic fibrosis. Specifically, we're talking about the science that led to a new medicine called Trikafta, and why the FDA fast-tracked this medicine nearly 3 years ago, and what a breakthrough it is. We also have some breaking news around a new trial in cystic fibrosis. Our panel of experts includes the nurse with whom I have had the pleasure of working with for 18 years. I'm not sure she thinks it's a pleasure. This may be more like a sentence. Joyce Funk. She works tirelessly with our CF patients. She's really on the front line. She's the one who actually coordinates and runs the clinic. She's really the brains and the glue. I don't say that lightly. Two of our patients are also here, Amanda Killen and Ben Hadel. I've known Amanda and Ben for a very long time. They are great folks, and they're going to talk a little bit about what their life was like before and after this new medication. Also in studio is one of my, can I even say this word, esteemed colleagues, who's also an outstanding cystic fibrosis physician, researcher, pulmonologist, critical care doc, and friend, Dr. Joel Murmas. And of course, Doc Hawk, Medical Director of Infection Prevention Control, going to be joining us shortly to talk about the COVID count and a little bit of news that we may not like so much about COVID numbers. Before we begin though, let's review some basic terms to set the stage for our conversation as we scrutinize the latest science that involves CF patients. Let's begin by defining cystic fibrosis. I'm going to start with a little discussion about how CF actually affects patients. Okay, here it is. I made a drawing. Watch out, folks. I warned everybody. Here we go. This is a cell. This is the cell that lines your airway. It's got a little gate in it, and that's called the Cystic Fibrosis Transmembrane Regulator Protein, or CFTR. It is developed, and how well it's structured and worked is dictated by genes. You get one gene from your mom and one gene from your dad. And then those two genes have to work together to build that protein. These are the little hairways that line the cells that line your airway. Now, these little hairs, what do? They sit in the lower part of your airway and they push mucus up, and then the hair lies flat, pushes mucus up. In order for that mucus to go up before where you can cough it out, because you don't cough stuff out from your low airways, that's the little mucociliary escalator, as we like to say, or just the escalator. It pushes the mucus up, but in order for that to happen, the mucus has to be the right consistency. And that little protein you just saw, that little channel, what it really does is it controls the amount of salt and water coming in and out of the cell, because it's got to control how thick that mucus is. If the mucus is too thick, then what happens is the hairs can't push. If the hairs can't push, stuff sits in your lungs or in your sinuses or in your liver or in your pancreas or in your skin and other places as well. And when it sits there, the mucus can collect debris and bacteria, inflammation, and pretty soon, bad things start happening. What happens? Well, you get that infection in there, it causes inflammation, it causes breakdown of the tissue around, and pretty soon you have a lot of disease in your airway, your pancreas, your liver, the three big organs for CF, but especially the airway. And what then happens is patients can't clear the mucus out and they can't breathe. We're going to talk a little bit about that with our patients in just a moment. The miracle of science. You know, we've said before, you gotta trust the science. There's a reason we all trust Mr. Spock, right? Because Mr. Spock, yes, live long and prosper. Mr. Spock delivers great science. And we're gonna talk about that even on May the 4th be with you today. So when Trikafta came about, Trikafta is this drug and it repairs the protein, because this gene, this is broken in CF, and then the mucus can't get in and out of the cell correctly. Trikafta is a pretty cool drug because it actually repairs the protein in 3 places so it can work. The FDA fast-tracked Trikafta in 2019, and we're going to talk about why and who is best suited to take this pill twice a day. We're going to hear from 2 of our patients on this remarkable drug in just a moment. It's pretty cool though. KU Medical Center participated in the phase 3 clinical trials for Trikafta as part of a double-blinded, randomized, placebo-controlled group. Now, what that means is that nobody knew who got the drug and who didn't. And we thought and followed and say, did the people who didn't get the drug, how'd they do? And how did the people do who got the drug? This is the gold standard for clinical trials. This is how you determine safety and efficacy. Phase 3 helps us know if the drug works and also the side effects. Trikafta was performing so well, the FDA, and first of all, the Data Safety Monitoring Boards had to stop the study, and then the FDA fast-tracked the drug. That is, they designated it as a breakthrough therapy with an orphan drug. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about what that last term is. An orphan drug is a big deal. It's a drug that is used by a relatively small number of patients because in CF there's about 30,000 patients. But when that small number makes it harder because a lot of drug companies, a lot of research, they're going to go talk to cancel cancer and COPD because there's so many patients, they can make a lot of money off those drug trials eventually if they have a good drug. But in a small number of patients, it takes an unusual group of people, lots of hard work together to try and develop these new therapies. And it takes a lot of really active, in this case, moms and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation to help direct that research. Then you overcome the cost of the investment and the research and development, and the drug companies still have to make enough money to give money back to their shareholders. So this orphan drug label qualifies drug sponsors for special incentives, including tax credits, exemptions, 7 years of what's called exclusivity in the marketplace. Nobody can come in and try and imitate the drug. This helps remarkable medicines like Trikafta be available to patients quicker, better, faster. Patients like Amanda Killen and Ben Hadel, who join us now to share how Trikafta has changed their lives. Amanda, what was life like for you before you started on Trikafta, right? Because you've had CF since birth, right? It's a genetic disease. You've had it since birth. What was life like for you before you got on Trikafta?
It was definitely a little rocky. My lung function was down to 20 to 30%. I had a Mickey button feeding tube in my stomach and would to get extra calories and stuff, and I still barely maintained about 100 pounds. I was in the hospital every 6 weeks for a 2-week stay for what we call a tune-up for an exacerbation I had, and I'd do IV antibiotics, and then I'd get out for about a month and a half back to normal life and would be right back in the hospital. I was bad enough that I was being seen at Barnes-Jewish Hospital in St. Louis for a double lung transplant, and it was coming up pretty fast. So it was definitely different than life is now, thanks to Trikafta.
Well, I remember those days. Those were tough days. We were pretty worried about her, Joyce.
Definitely.
Ben Hadel.
So was I.
Yeah. And your mom. They would come into the hospital. They'd bring their card table. You saw that, play cards. Their friends would come and they'd hang out. And everybody was rallied around. So, Ben, talk to us about your life with CF prior to Trikafta. What was that like?
So when I was 6 months old, I was diagnosed with CF, and they told my mom and dad, he'll be lucky to live to age 18. And growing up, I felt I lived relatively normal other than treatments. And then as I got older, it progressed and became worse and worse. And there were times when, I'm a financial advisor. I do a lot of retirement planning for a living. When I would think, hey, I'm always working with these people on when they retire. And I'm thinking one day, when do I retire? Because I don't know what my future really looks like. It feels really uncertain to me. And that picture of me with the New Year's Eve hat in the hospital, that was about a year before I was on Trikafta. And I was, deathly ill. And, I didn't know when the end was, but I felt it was becoming near. And, I didn't think it at the time, but, looking back in retrospect, I really didn't feel great. And, I'd wake up and the first thing I felt like I had to start my day with was a treatment. And a lot of times I do that treatment and I'd cough so much and I'd feel so bad. I'm thinking, I just want to go back to sleep. And there were times, when I was in college, I felt like it pushed me to achieve more. And then it was getting to the point in my life where it was becoming a real massive detriment, and it was really starting to affect my quality of life significantly.
Yeah, and I remember those days with Ben because you were also you guys were both really active because Amanda was a dancer. Ben worked out on whatever high performing thing you tried to do, and it was hard. And you guys really you struggled a little bit about that. So, how many hours a day did you spend doing airway clearance? That stuff that the process we did in CF to try and get the mucus out of your lungs. Amanda, how many hours a day did you spend on that?
At least 3 hours a day, and then I would do more drainage and airway clearance every time I showered. Every time I danced, I'd cough more up and do more airway clearance. It was pretty much a full-time job.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's 3 hours in addition to everything else you had to try and do to the day to hold a job or to try and work and have a life. Ben, how about you? How many hours a day?
I would say the same thing when I include workout time, because you wake up, you do a treatment, that takes about an hour. You do your nebulizers, you do your airway clearance, and then working out was its own form of airway clearance. And a lot of times, I'd go to a CrossFit class, I'd get 20 minutes in maybe, and I'd have to go to the bathroom and just cough. And some of the stuff that would come up, I'd be like, oh, that's, nobody wants to see this. This is pretty nasty. But, it took a significant amount of time.
So what's like life now after Trikafta, Amanda? Let's start with you. How is it different?
In every possible way. I've gained 40% lung function back. I was able to get rid of my feeding tube. I've gained like 30 pounds since then. I look like a normal person now. I don't look like a sickly little kid. I was able to get a full-time job. My husband and I bought a house. We got a dog. I have enough energy to work out at the gym in the morning, work my full-time job, and then go and teach dance for 3 to 4 hours every night and still have energy to come home and clean the house and play with our dog. And it's a world of difference. I am no longer being seen at Barnes-Jewish Hospital for a transplant. They said I'm too healthy now, which is fantastic. If I hadn't started on Trikafta when I did, I would definitely have had a transplant by now. And the fact that that's not even on the radar is a miracle.
It is a miracle. Ben, how about your life? Talk to us.
So when I first started taking the medicine, that morning, this was a couple weeks after I got married, that morning I weighed myself and I was 127 pounds, which I'm not a tall guy, but that is really skinny for my height. I'm about 5'6", if I'm being generous with myself. And within hours of taking it, I was ravenously hungry. I mean, I could not stop eating. And, my wife was like, God, are you sure you're okay? Like, is something wrong? Because I just wouldn't stop eating. And, within a week, I gained 10 pounds. And there's me with a fried potato stick looking like a fat, happy kid. And within a month, I gained 20 pounds. And it finally got to a point where I was like, man, I need to lose weight. I gained like 40 plus pounds, largest I'd ever been in my life, which was amazing and a miracle. But I was like, man, I actually have to start watching what I'm eating. And, I started working out again, went to CrossFit, and I'll go an entire workout and not cough one single time. And it still is, I get choked up sometimes when I think about it, because, I remember being on it for a while and told my wife, hey, I don't want to forget what it was like before, because I don't ever want to stop appreciating how dramatically different life is. And even just a couple weeks ago, it was probably a cold or something. And, I was out for a day, recovered. And I remember just seeing you guys in clinic, and you said, isn't that crazy? If this was before Trikafta, we'd be checking in the hospital right now. And that was accurate. Every time I'd get a cold, flu, whatever, it always meant hospital stay. And I couldn't be more thrilled or tickled still. And it's been 2.5 years. And again, I still get kind of choked up when I think about it, but it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. I couldn't have dreamt how different it would be. Energy, everything that's an indicator of my health has improved dramatically over the last 2.5 years. And it's like every time I go in for a checkup, things are keep getting better, keep looking better. And it's just snowballing in the right way for the first time in my life instead of in the wrong way. So it's been absolutely great.
You know, I just got to say, I remember the first day we saw these people back in Clinic Choice, and I think we were both in tears because we've known them for so long. I'm going to choke up thinking about it again.
Yeah. Clinic visits are now a celebration, where I think before folks would come in and there'd be a little trepidation until they had had their lung function tested and knew what it was. So yeah, it's great.
It is amazing, and I think here's the part the part of it I most enjoyed is we sit down and we say, okay guys, we have to have an important conversation. Let's talk about your retirement accounts, because you're going to finally have to worry about that.
Ben's going to be handing out cards.
He might be financial planners. You know, it is just so different. And I think, wow, this is what science can do if we trust the science. Guys, have you been participants in clinical trials along the way? Amanda, Ben, have you participated in some research trials?
Yeah, several. I did several along the way. One was supposed to do what Trikafta actually does, and that ended up being, they stopped the study. I don't even remember the name of it or what it was. But multiple, because I've thought, hey, you know, I feel good. I'll do whatever I can to help out, to figure out how to kind of tackle this thing. And, you know, I got to a point where after that failed trial, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to count on anything like this coming out. And if it does, that's just a bonus. Take care of myself like it's never going to happen. And obviously it did. But yeah, I have participated, still do. I'm on one where they kind of pair metformin with Trikafta, because that's I have CF-related diabetes, and that should or may help. So, but yes, I am a big proponent of clinical trials.
And we appreciate that, because that's where we advance the science. Amanda, what made you trust the science? Why did you feel okay to take Trikafta? Maybe you got, you know, was trialed in 200 or 300 patients or whatever, but you were like, okay, I trust this, let's do it.
Yeah, I mainly just heard all good things. Like I tried really hard to make sure that like I read the good and the bad, but there wasn't all that much bad. They, like, the worst case scenario, they kind of maintained where they were at. And then there was just any sort of increase from a tiny bit to life-changing numbers. And I was up for anything. I mean, I was bad enough, like I said, that it was going to be transplant time. So why not go ahead and try it? Even if it maintained where I was at and put transplant off a few months would have been great. I never expected the change it's had on me now. And then you guys, I mean, listening to you guys talk about it in clinic, and a big proponent of it, and made sure I was aware of all the possibilities that I might get, really made me feel comfortable, and that I knew that I could trust what I was hearing and trust the science.
Yeah, it's a big deal. How does it feel, Amanda, to not cough so much?
Crazy. I've had to start doing ab workouts in the gym though, because I'm used to coughing all the time. That kind of did my abs all day. But no, it's great. I don't get the weird looks and people pulling out hand sanitizer when I'm at the movies or the grocery store of they're going to catch something from me, when really you're not going to catch anything. But I sound like I could croak any minute. But it's great. People don't look at me like, oh gosh, she's sick, I need to stay away from her. It's great.
You know, I guess we have to list as a new side effect to Trikafta, flabby abs. Watch out for that one. Watch out for that one. Joel Murmis, why were CF patients so eager to join research? And first of all, you agree, right? This is a miracle drug.
Oh yeah, this has been, you know, as a CF doc, has been a dream to participate in, just because of how dramatic it's been. You know, to see people's lives, as they described, completely transformed, has just been incredible. And I feel so fortunate to be part of it in an era in CF treatment where advancements like this have been made. You know, as you know, compared to in the 1960s and 70s when children were born with CF, you know, life expectancy was in the, you know, in the teenage years was the typical life expectancy.
Let's say when I started at CF in 1992, the average life expectancy, and yes, that was 30 years ago, but when I started CF back then, it was around 18 or 20. So, right. I mean, to think today, yeah. You know, it's 42 or 40, whatever, but that's really before we see the Trikafta impacts. The Trikafta, I think now it's limitless, honestly.
Yeah, you know, we haven't proven this yet, but obviously we're hopeful. We're hopeful that kids born today, may have normal life expectancy, and I really think for many people with CF, that's really a true possibility, which is incredible. And 10 years ago, we never could have said that. This couldn't have been possible without obviously the CF community, and people with CF being committed to conducting clinical trials, participating in clinical trials. The CF Foundation has been a great advocate of our center and other centers across the United States, and helping really create a culture of research in the community and understanding that people have to participate for these trials to happen and for advancements like this to be possible. And I think most all people with CF understand that, and for that reason have been really willing to participate with the hopes that someday that will help their health, but obviously also help other people with CF. And so, creating that culture of research within our center has really helped us become a leading CF research center.
I'll just say one of the cool things, I've been privileged enough to do a little work with the CF Foundation. I get to go back and do some national meetings one time, and Bob Bell, who really was was a head of the CF Foundation for many years, and I remember being in a meeting with him one time. There was this challenge, and we're trying to get something through, and he would just say, I need a mother, because it was the moms and the parents who drove research in CF for so long by being such strong advocates for it. And if you want to do a walk for CF, it's coming up on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool thing. Okay. Joel, when Trikafta first received FDA approval, it was for patients aged 12 and older. Now it's down to 6 and 12. You think it's going to get below 6 anytime soon so we can get it to everybody?
I do think that's likely. That clinical trial is currently underway, and we're anticipating that trial will conclude this summer in studying and evaluating the safety of this medication, which we know is so effective in children age 2 to age 6. And so hopefully, it takes a little time to analyze the data once the trial is concluded, but hopefully by this fall, we'll have a good sense of whether that's going to be available to children that young.
I hope it is soon. Okay, Joyce Funk. Outside of having to put up with me and work with me, I apologize for that.
Full-time job.
Full-time job. I know. Got to manage the manager. Oh, watch out for that. So you've watched CF change. How has that impacted the work you do?
I would say probably the two biggest changes, and Amanda and Ben, I think, both touched on this, is that the decrease in the amount of hospitalizations. So the coordination of hospital admissions has dramatically decreased. On the flip side, that means we're managing things on the outpatient side, right? But like Ben said, we're having conversations about how our folks get through a viral infection that in the past, typically, they ended up on antibiotics or maybe in the hospital on IVs. We're doing conservative measures and airway clearance and basically trying to get through them like anybody without CF would. I think one of the other major changes that we're seeing on our side is a lot more coordination with specialty pharmacies, insurance companies, payers, because unfortunately the cost of this particular medication and a lot of the cystic fibrosis medications is incredibly costly.
So, and just to say it's $300,000 a year, and that's a big number, but that's what I would. You put a lot of money into developing a drug, and there aren't many people.
No.
Take it.
Well, exactly. And, and it takes a village. And, we're incredibly fortunate here at our CF Center. We have a great team that works really, really hard on this. Even when we can get insurance approval for it, obviously it's going to be at the highest cost. It's going to be a highest tier medication. So we have to look into other sources to try and help fund that to make it affordable for our folks.
Yeah, it does make a big deal, and I know you still spend a ton of hours trying to get that outpatient stuff for the work, especially without when they're not on inpatient. Do you ever think you'd see the day that things are going to look like this?
I don't think I'd ever thought that I'd see the day where things looked like this, right? We always dreamed big, but I don't know that any of us could have dreamed this big. So no, this is pretty remarkable.
So just to say, the relationship between the nurse and the patients are pretty important. I think Ben and Amanda, you've come to depend on Joyce. She's kind of like a member of your family. Talk a little bit about that relationship with the team there. Ben, you go first.
The whole entire team is absolutely incredible. I mean, I know that if I have a need or a question or anything, I asked Joyce, and she's, no offense to you, Dr. Stites, I feel like as knowledgeable as you. And it's amazing seeing you two work together. And I mean, you guys have just been such an incredible team. I feel so thankful, so fortunate. My entire family does, and feel so lucky to have you guys to work with. But Joyce is just.
Joyce is the rock star. I'm along for the ride for the most part. Amanda, how about you?
Yeah, you guys are definitely not just my doctor and my nurse. You're my family members. I doubt very many doctors give out their personal cell phones, but Dr. Stites always does. Like, it just makes you feel comfortable and confident in the care you're getting. I invited you guys to my wedding, and you left your vacation to come to our wedding early.
And it was beautiful.
So,
Actually, I've been to both weddings. I was Ben's and Amanda's.
I don't know how many patients would invite their doctor and their nurse to their wedding, but you guys are definitely not just that. You're family.
Well, thank you. You guys are way too kind. But I think, Joyce does this amazing job working because she's right there and interfacing with folks on the phone all day long. So, all right, Joe Murmis, we still have a new CF trial to tell you about next. And then we want to hear your questions. You can send those to us on YouTube, Facebook, the Medical News Network, and now Twitter. Those links are on your screen. But before we do that, it's time to check in with Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director for Infection Prevention and Control and Infectious Disease Specialist. Hawk?
Yeah.
How are we doing?
I think we're doing pretty good. 6 active infections, 1 in the ICU, 0 on the ventilator. Still 10 in that recovery period, a total of 16 patients, but the number of active infections continued to be in those single digits.
We like that. But nationally, there are a few concerning trends, right? The number of new cases, despite a lot harder, it's not as easy to access testing that we're going to know about. There's at-home tests and things like that, and even they have to pay for, so many people aren't doing tests. But even if we just look at the tests being done in the few swab clinics that are out there, numbers are up 47% across the United States. Hospitalizations from COVID now are up 16%.
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, I think it's concerning, Steve. Just like you talked about the testing, it's hard to say what all that means because of the home tests and things like that and reporting. But to your point, it's going to be hospitalizations moving forward. I think we are seeing a concerning trend, ticking up slightly. Obviously, nowhere near what we had in the surge with Omicron. But I was looking through Research Square, which is a kind of a preprint area, while publications are getting reviewed, and what they found was that Omicron was really no different than the other waves. And so I think that continues to lend support to the people that were vaccinated. They continue to have a much lower risk of hospitalization and death. Even though Omicron was said to be less severe, what this study out of Massachusetts found in their health systems was that was actually not true. And the latest CDC data, updated from February, still shows that if you were vaccinated and boosted, if you were unvaccinated and unboosted, you were 20 times more likely to die than those patients that were vaccinated and boosted, and that's during the Omicron. So I think we continue to have to endorse the fact of getting vaccinated and staying up to date with that.
Man, isn't that the truth? In fact, I think it's time to get a booster shot on this program pretty darn soon. I'm up for my 4th shot, and so, guys, warning, next Wednesday, here it comes. But I think it is a really important point. We've talked here about the science, and look at what happened in saving lives. Vaccination saves lives, and it's all from the science.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to hear her testimony about listening to her providers and listening to trusted sources. It wasn't social media. It wasn't a celebrity talking about a relative of a friend whose testicles blew up because they got a vaccine. These patients, even though this was fast-tracked, just as you talked about, this drug, just as the mRNA vaccines were fast-tracked, that doesn't mean that the science was shorted, that the steps were shorted. It was still done in a very efficient manner, taking care to really look at the safety and efficacy of all things. But these patients trusted you, and I think that's what we need to go back to. Even doing her own research, she was able to come up with very good sources to look for that and look kind of where we're at now. So I think it makes a testimony
difference.
For that.
So I am a little nervous about some of the trends in COVID nationwide. You're seeing it especially in the Northeast, where numbers are as high as they were during the Delta surge, which we didn't like. That was one of the bad surges. And so now that we're starting to see, typical, it takes 2 to 6 weeks to see what happens to the hospitalizations. We're starting to see the uptick in hospitalizations. We'll see how that goes. You know, maybe enough people have had some natural immunity, and a lot of people have been vaccinated, especially in high risk age groups. But you know, I think it really, what it really should say to us is that we have to be nimble, we have to be quick. When the virus comes our way, don't get sick. Oh, not bad, not bad, not bad, right? Good. I did it on the fly, not bad. All right, Dr. Mermis, congratulations on enrolling and dosing the first trial in the world to receive a new CF gene therapy. Okay, before we talked about repairing it, now we're talking about just replacing it. So talk to us a little bit about that study.
Yeah, so you know, the drug we've been talking about, Trikafta, the way that it works is it actually corrects the protein that Dr. Stites had on that whiteboard there, the CFTR channel, that chloride channel. It basically fixes that channel so that it works. You know, people with the most common mutation, which is the Delta F508 mutation, are the primary people that qualify for that medication. So we still have unfortunately, about 10% of people with CF who currently don't qualify or benefit from a medication like Trikafta. And this is where therapies like we're talking about in this new clinical trial, gene therapies, come in, where there are many different mutations that cause CF. Why this Delta F508 mutation is the most common one in about 90% of people or so, 85 to 90% of people. There are actually about 2,000 mutations, believe it or not, that can cause CF. So a number of mutations. And if we're able to just fix the gene, the mutation that you have doesn't really matter. You know, we can actually just basically put in the right code that produces the right protein, the right CFTR channel, and then theoretically, if we can get that to work that way, then you know, we can help people with CF. So the way this clinical trial works is we're actually in what we call a vector, which is a way we deliver the gene. We're actually delivering a healthy, normal CFTR gene. It's delivered nebulized, like you would a medicine that you're taking, like albuterol or something like that, which a lot of people are familiar with. You nebulize the therapy into the lungs, which we talked about as the primary organ that's infected or affected by CF. And if this therapy works as it should, that code would be incorporated into the cells within that person's lungs, and they'll then produce normal CFTR protein, regardless of the mutation that they have. So this is kind of getting close to the holy grail, so to speak, in CF, in that, you know, we can really correct the problem no matter which mutation you have. You know, there are people who have very rare mutations, as you know, where therapies like Trikafta aren't going to work for them. And this is the way we can try and bring science to all people with CF, the remaining 10% who currently don't have that benefit of Trikafta.
Well, and I think the other thing is that, especially if you could do gene therapy right early on in life, then you won't have all the long-term side effects. It's one thing to repair, it's another thing if you just replace it and have completely normal function everywhere in the body. The other thing I would say that is exciting about this is it's really hard now when you're seeing your CF patient population and you see the ones who can't be on the therapy because they don't qualify and they don't get any benefit. And the stark difference between how well the folks who are getting Trikafta are doing and the ones who aren't. It's kind of hard to watch.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us a little bit about, it's an open label trial, so tell us a little bit about what that means, Dr. Mermis.
Yeah, so open label, so this is a very early phase we call phase 1, which was the first phase when we study a new therapy. Our primary goal with a phase 1 study, as you know, is to look at the safety of that drug, and to make sure first, before we really investigate how well it works, we want to make sure it's safe before we advance it into phase 2 and 3 clinical trials. Open label just means that everybody qualifies for the therapy, everybody knows they're getting the therapy. It's the investigators who are conducting the trial aren't blinded. They know that the participant's getting the therapy and the participant knows. And there are certain scenarios like this where we're really just looking at safety, where that's the right approach. All people that way know that they're going to be getting the therapy in this way, compared to the study we talked about with Trikafta, where you're really trying to evaluate how well the drug works. You do a double-blind placebo-controlled trial where that way the investigators don't know, the participants don't know, so we're really able to be certain if we're seeing an effect of the drug that we know it's really working.
You know, it is pretty amazing. And what can trial participants expect once they're enrolled?
So we alluded to this a little bit earlier. Basically, it's a one-time delivery of a nebulized vector, which delivers the DNA into the lungs. And you nebulize this therapy over several hours. And then basically after that, over the next month, we really keep a close eye on people. Obviously, we watch their health very closely. We look at how their lungs are doing and other laboratory studies to make sure that they're not having any adverse effects from the therapy. And then what's really cool is 1 month out after we've nebulized the CF gene, then what we actually do is take some biopsies within that person's lung and see if it actually worked. We actually see if the CFTR protein is at the apical surface of their cells, as you drew there.
My terrific artwork, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so we're able to actually see if the proof of concept, if the therapy works as expected. And that's really what we're going to be doing here in the phase 1 study. And if it looks like the science does show that it works as we expect, then we'll move on to advanced phase studies and ultimately, hopefully, phase 3, where we're really looking at, okay, if we deliver this therapy, how well does it improve lung function, the mucus clearance, reduction in what we call exacerbations or episodes where people need IV antibiotic therapy.
That's what science do. Who was that guy on the Royals that used to say that's what speed do? Who was that? Jared Dyson.
Gerard.
Gerard Dyson, thank you. 2015, Royals, that's what speed do. That's what science do, folks, right there. I love it. We have a QR code on the screen. Open your phone to the photo settings if you're interested in learning more, or if you know anybody who's got CF, or if you have CF and want to participate. All right, Jess, we've been talking a long time. I got to tell you, this is like my favorite topic in the world. I can talk about CF and these patients all day long. They are great. Community questions.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, though, Dr. Stites. The first time you and I ever met was when Trikafta first came to be, and I got to sit down with you and talk about this. And so I just remember that was the first moment I really got to know you, and you were really open about it.
I might have been excited that day, too.
You were very excited. You were very emotional, I have to say, very emotional. And so I think I got to know the real you when you talk about this topic. So, So Samuel has a comment and says, Ben and Amanda, great job sharing your stories. So I just wanted to share that with you. Lou wants to know, can you explain CF versus asthma? Are they at all related?
Dr. McGurk. God, I knew I was going to do that sometime. Joel McGurk, Joel Murmis.
Different Joel. I knew what you meant.
I know.
It's okay.
Dr. Murmis. If we just had a different last name, it would stand out. One of our bone marrow transplant docs, he's been on the program before, but Murmis.
Yeah, so
don't shoot me later.
So they're very different diseases. So asthma actually is an issue with what we call bronchoconstriction or bronchospasm. We have muscle that actually lines our airways, and in asthma, for various reasons, sometimes it's due to allergic response, the muscle in our airways can tighten and create bronchoconstriction where there's difficult airflow in and out of the lungs, where in CF we alluded to the fact that it's a specific problem with this chloride transporter for people with CF, and people with asthma don't have that issue. So while both can kind of at times feel the same and that you have difficulty breathing, asthma is a very different disease, treated differently in different ways that we can kind of get that smooth muscle to relax and improve airflow within the lungs.
Unfortunately, asthma, for the most part, did not carry a really difficult prognosis as CF did, although there are individuals with asthma who have a very severe form of it and may not do well. So.
Right.
Jess.
Joellen says she may have missed this, so just clarify. Did you say that the drug was now widely available for anyone in the proper age group?
Yeah, Trikafta definitely is, and you heard it from our patients, and it's gone past the science into the use of folks, and that's why they've benefited so much across the world.
Dr. Stites, Angie's interested about the genetics. Do parents need to get some type of genetic testing before they start a family? Would that be necessary? Would that change anything?
I would say that, and we'll listen to everybody here, but I think generally because folks know if CF is in their family, because there will be somebody who's had it before, that would be one sign. But in general, we don't recommend routine screening for CF, at least not yet. That may be, but that could come someday. We do screen for it at birth, though.
Yeah.
So I think it's a standard part of the screen that newborns have when they are tested, and it's one of the genes that we look for. I know. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It is Newborn screening, just to be sure everybody knows, is required in all 50 states of the United States at birth. So your child will get screened, at birth. I think if there's a concern with a family history of someone in your, a direct relative, blood relative who had CF in the past, then I think, if you're considering having children, getting genetic counseling is a reasonable thing to do. I think if there's absolutely no history, it's not something that at this point we would routinely recommend.
Both mom and dad both have to be carriers of the gene, isn't that correct?
That's right. Both mom and dad have to be carriers, yes.
Okay. Jerry was just interested if there was any at all side effects of Trikafta for Amanda or Ben.
Let's ask them. Amanda, side effects.
Really, the only side effect I've had is my acne has gotten worse. And I will deal with that every day if it means I get the benefits of Trikafta. But those are really the only side effects I've had. I know they check like our liver function and that kind of stuff because it can be kind of hard on those organs. But so far, mine have been fine.
Yeah, it's interesting, the liver thing. It's a little hard to completely understand it, but I think what's going on, most of the time, the secretions inside the liver in CF tend to be very thick, just like they are in the lung, and so it kind of causes a blockage, and then all of a sudden the cells slow down. But once you get on Trikafta, the blockage may still be there, but the Trikafta makes the cell speed up to effect. That is, the bile can get out a little bit faster, but it may still face obstruction. It may back up a little bit more. We're trying to come up with new therapies to help relieve that blockage a little bit. So I think we're going to find that's going to work out. And then, CF patients, this acne thing, it's just kind of wild because you would think the sweat duct was working better, but instead, some people get a little bit of asthma.
Yeah.
Not asthma, I said the wrong word, acne. Man, I got a word salad today.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with the, just changes. Obviously, we talked about CFTRs in the skin, so it does. It has the potential to affect skin health. I don't know. We truly understand exactly what's going on there. It may ultimately, in part, related just to better health, which alters hormone production into a more natural physiologic production of hormones, and that may have some effect on it as well.
I think you just said you guys are going to go through puberty again. I think that's what I just heard. Ben, thoughts about the side effects of Trikafta with you?
So honestly, the only one I notice is in the winter now my hands get dry, which before, I don't know if it was all the extra salt moisturizing my skin, but I never used to have used hand moisturizer before. Now my hands dry, but I do know the side effects of not taking Trikafta are getting sick and dying, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and just to say, since you've been on Trikafta, I bet winter actually feels better than it used to feel.
Oh, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The cold air used to really irritate my lungs whenever the weather would change from summer to fall or winter to spring. I'd have several days a year I was just sick because the change in the pressure, the change in the weather just irritated my lungs, and I'd just be wiped out, tired, cough more than normal, and everything's just better.
Joyce, you hear these stories. How does this affect you personally?
Oh, it's incredibly emotional and it's exciting at the same time. I've gotten to see these guys do so many things in their lives that they probably never dreamed they would be able to do. And it's really remarkable. I mean, yeah, like they say, the side effects, we can deal with those with the advantages that we've had.
And the science?
Oh, obviously none of this would be possible without the science, right? If all these drugs had not been developed and researched, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Jess?
A couple more questions. Rob was asking, as far as COVID was concerned during this pandemic, are CF patients considered high risk or immunocompromised? How did they fare during the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, and we can all kind of tackle this together. But I think partly it depended on how severe your CF was and how severe your lung disease is. CF patients aren't technically immunocompromised. They have a good immune system, but they do have chronic infections. So if you put something like COVID on top of the chronic indwelling bacteria in their lungs, then that's a tough combination. And if you have less lung function because you've had a lot of the destruction from CF, then you really are at high risk. So I consider CF patients to be high risk, Dr. Murmis.
Yeah, I think we've actually have a pretty good data on this across the United States in a national registry we follow of most people with CF, and are able to monitor their outcomes, as you know. And Fortunately, most people who are pretty healthy, particularly, we were so fortunate, as you know, with Trikafta, in that it got approved right before the pandemic, thank goodness. And really, I think, helped people with CF get through the last few years, obviously much healthier than potentially would have been the case if Trikafta wasn't available. But fortunately, most people with healthy lung function have fared pretty well. But obviously, people with really advanced lung disease who are near transplantation or, as you know, post-transplantation, certainly are vulnerable and at risk of becoming very sick with COVID. So we've really stressed vaccination in this population, as we have, for all other people as well. So fortunately at our center, most people who've contracted COVID-19 have done okay. We haven't had any really catastrophic outcomes, fortunately.
All right. Jess.
Questions. I want to get these in for folks. Dean wants to know, will this medication help AATD? Are you familiar?
Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency?
Alpha-1.
No, it won't help. That's a whole different mechanism. Unfortunately, patients like that don't make enough of an enzyme to help protect against the development of emphysema, especially if you're a smoker. So this drug doesn't affect that. There are good therapies for alpha-1 antitrypsin, but they have to be started very early.
So is Trikafta good for all CF patients?
No,
or
it's
are there
good for
some
90%.
that it's not good for?
Yeah, there's about 10% of patients who don't have the right gene, because this drug is very targeted to repair a certain gene that happens to be present either both from mom and dad in about 60 or 70% of patients, but at least from one parent in about 80 to 90% of patients. And so if you even repair one part of it, it actually helps patients a lot. So there's about 10, 15% of patients who have no benefit from it. And for them, the struggle is real and the struggle continues. Oh, Jess, you're on mute. Okay. All right, well, we still don't hear you, so I'm going to just go ahead and talk a little bit more about a couple things and see if there are any last thoughts as we go around the table this morning. And then I have a last thought at the very end, so I get the final thought. Yes! All right. Amanda, I'm going to start with you. Final thoughts about our topic this morning and about this life, this new life. Oh, no. Okay, guys, we're not hearing from them either. So here's what I'm going to do. It's fixed. Okay, Amanda.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, Trikafta has been a life changer for me. I never would have expected this. I kind of always expected the worst, but hoped for the best. So this has been amazing. I definitely recommend doing your research, listening to your doctors, doing everything you can to learn the most about science, and because it could change your life. It definitely has changed mine.
Thank you. And thank you for being on the program today. Ben Hadel.
Yeah, so, we talk a lot about trusting the science. And, we're unique in that we have a disease that if we didn't trust the science, we wouldn't have made it this far. And Trikafta is just one of many scientific developments that have come out for not only for CF, but for everything that have helped both Amanda and I and all these CFers along the way. And like I said, when I was diagnosed at 6 months, they said, hey, he'd be lucky to live to age 18 because that's where the science was at the time. And it's kind of gone along with our lives. And then as we got older, that kept getting pushed out. Now I'm 34 and there's no, you're going to, this is when you can expect. It's really, heck, who knows what the heck it is. But it reminds me of a story of a man who was caught on the top of his house during a flood. And somebody came up on a raft and said, come on, get on the raft. Let's get out of here. And the guy goes, no, God will save me. I'm not worried about it. And then somebody comes up on a boat and they say, hey, come on, get on the boat. Let's get out of here. He goes, no, I'm all right. God will save me. And then finally a helicopter comes, is like, hey, come on, get on the helicopter. You're going to drown. He goes, nope, not worried about it. God will save me. So the guy eventually is overcome, drowns, and he goes up and he's talking to God. He said, hey, God, why didn't you save me? He said, what are you talking about? I sent you a raft, a boat, and a helicopter. and I feel like that's what all these drug developments are. It's, if you feel like you are or not a religious person, this isn't something, they're not contradictory to each other. And everything is just, I'm continually baffled by medical technologies that have come along and all the science that has helped and made our lives so much better. But that's kind of my final thought on it. I feel truly blessed.
Thank you. You guys, you rock, which we already knew. So thank you. And they both have beautiful weddings. Hawk, final thoughts from today?
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I mean, I think, continue to trust the science, have faith in it, speak to those people that you trust, especially your medical providers. We are here to keep you well, to get you well, to keep you out of the hospital. Continue to understand that and really, continue to trust the science.
Joyce Funk.
Well, first of all, Amanda and Ben, you were amazing. You did an amazing job, so thank you guys for being part of today. In the 18 plus years that I've worked in cystic fibrosis and worked with Dr. Stites, I've seen a lot of different therapies developed that may have improved CF patient symptoms, new airway clearance devices, and now the CFTR modulators like Trikafta that have really revolutionized folks' health. None of these therapies would have ever been developed and brought to market without science and without endless scientific research. So,
thank you, and
You're
thanks
welcome.
for being here
You
today.
bet.
Don't let me hang. Come on. There we go. I owe her. Jill Merber's final thoughts for today.
Yeah, I think I think the story here of Trikafta, as we've heard firsthand, is one example of the power of what we talk about personalized medicine and the future of how we deliver therapies to people with various diseases. How we can really, with science, we can personalize therapies specifically for that individual. And as science advances, we're going to see more and more of this for various diseases. And obviously, CF has really been one of the leading examples in the world of how effective this approach can be, and it's just been wonderful to hear about that today. And I feel truly blessed to be able to practice medicine and care for people with CF during such an amazing time.
As we wind down the program today, I have been blessed and honored to have the privilege of practicing medicine since I graduated from medical school in 1986, a very long time ago. And the story of CF has really been the story of my life in medicine. Watching the science grow and knowing, and you've heard it today, the intersection of faith that there will be help, hope that is coming soon, and then the science that delivers it. And then the faith in each other, the faith in the team. I mean, our CF team is so remarkable, and our patients are so remarkable. And I've watched a lot of patients die. I've watched a principal of Rockhurst High School die, one of the best people I ever knew. I've watched young mothers die. I've watched older folks die. And to think that there's a therapy now that can prevent that, and to help people live a normal life expectancy, that they have to worry about retirement. That is remarkable. It didn't just happen. It happened because so many people invested their lives and so many patients trusted the process and trusted the science that we could get to where we are today. Faith, hope, science, whether it's CF or COVID-19, that's the way that we can move forward. That's it for us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with the Morning Medical Update. Have a great day. And remember, Mr. Spock, live long and prosper. Science can help us get there. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update. Forget water after a workout. Some are cracking open a cold one. I'm Jessica Lovell. Could this post-workout beverage choice have any health benefits? That's Thursday at 8 on these social media channels.
I'm Alexis Del Cid. On the next All Things Heart.
For an 82-year-old, I guess I'm doing pretty good.
I'm going to take off your other shoe and sock also.
From a blister on his foot to nearly losing his leg, learn the heart connection to the procedure that saved him Thursday
Subscribe
at 10.
to our morning medical update and open mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.